Well, a very good and sunny morning from London. It's Saturday. I was going to spend today at home doing some editing, but the sun's out. I can't stay at home, especially in the UK. When the sun's out, you have to go out. I think it's the law somewhere. Anyway, it has been a while since I've made a Q&A video. The last one was about 6 months ago when we were traveling in Hokkaido, and to my surprise that video was very popular with you. Many of you liked it, so I figured it's time for a quick update. Now, this video will be a mixture of a Q&A, and towards the end it'll be a bit of a channel and life update. I feel so egotistical and self-centered making a video about me and my life, which is a bit strange, but it's one of these videos that I enjoy watching from other people. So I figured, actually wait, there is a corner of a railing here, which, don't ask. Don't ask why I took that photo, but I really like it. So I say I like it. It looked all right, but it might be total crap. Anyway, so cute questions and then a little update. Quite a few questions have come in. I'll try to group them together to try and answer as many people's questions as possible. If I haven't got around to your specific question, I do apologize, but I will try my absolute best. God, what a day. So the first questions were about laptop monitor. So in terms of monitors, I use the MacBook 14-inch Pro as well as the iPad Pro, and at home I have the Studio Display, the old version. I don't pay too much attention to the monitors because I find that Apple monitors tend to be very accurate. Of course, if you need very niche specific colors, or if you're doing like commercial stuff, then yeah, having color calibration, etc. is probably wise, but for what I do, the Apple stuff is more than accurate enough, and because everything is Apple and all of that, it just works, and I don't have to worry about calibrating things or anything like that. The one thing I would say which has caught me off guard, and it can catch many people off guard, is using the, what do you call it when the screen goes yellow? There's a church there, I think. When the screen goes yellow, God, I forgot the name of it. I'll write it here somewhere, but make sure all these features that adjust the screen temperature, switched off, because they can trip you up. As for the laptop itself, it's just a MacBook Pro 14-inch. I've paid extra to have 4 terabytes of SSD storage, which now seem like a bit of a bargain considering how expensive these things get. And I paid extra for RAM, which helps a lot with running Lightroom. Other than that, that's it. Didn't see many of them around here.
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
I've never heard of it. You?
No idea. Wow.
It's a 3-litre engine.
Right.
Yeah. It's obviously been so well looked after.
It's like brand new, isn't it?
Yeah. There's been some work done there, but
yeah,
it's just so elegant, isn't it?
That's amazing.
Beautiful. Little
Street interactions like that always restore my faith in humanity, that we're not all antisocial people who just sit on our phones and only interact via text. Always nice to just chat with random people in the street. Have I used a Fuji GFX 50 or 100? The short answer is no. I've never really needed to get one. I've never had the desire to get one. In terms of Fujis, I still have the X100 if I want to use a Fuji, but in terms of medium format, obviously I've got a relationship with Hasselblad, and that kind of scratches the medium format itch for me. So no, I never really had the reason to get one. Have you ever used a tripod to get motion blur photos? Not really, because for the motion blur that I go for, I need movement. Plus the IBIS in most cameras is pretty good now for the shots that I want to get. However, I did use a tripod. It was like one of these tiny tabletop ones to get the photo of Mount Etna erupting, because that was I think that was like a 20-second timer maybe. So I had to use a tripod for that because it was pitch black. But other than that, no, I've never really needed tripods for my photography. Just doesn't really fit into how I shoot. The next question is about camera filters, whether I use any. I use an ND filter quite a bit, but that's mostly for video. I sometimes have to use an ND filter if I'm shooting at slow shutter speeds to get the motion blur. I messed around with the mist filters before, but it's not really my cup of tea. I don't like them because they're baked into the image and I just don't really like that. CPL filters, so polarizers, I do have them for all my lenses. I don't use them for my type of photography that much. However, there are definitely scenarios where I have used them for a specific purpose, like cutting the reflection in water, or cutting reflection in glass if you're shooting certain things. So for example, if I get a job where I need to shoot inside a hotel, I would definitely bring a CPL because that would make my job so much easier with all of the reflections everywhere. What zoom lens would I recommend for someone with a Fuji X-T5 that is not too expensive, under £1,000? The only one I would go for is the Sigma 18-50 or 18-55. I think it's 18-50, but it's one of those, right? I used to have that on my X-T5 when I had the X-T5, and I think that lens is absolutely incredible. If you can live without the aperturing, then yeah, I mean, it's great. It's so tiny as well. Because that's one thing that really annoyed me with the Fuji lenses, that the zooms, the red badge zooms, is that they were quite hefty. Obviously, they're still smaller than my full frame stuff, but like, yeah. Anyway, I'm talking nonsense now. So Sigma 18-50 or 18-55, one of those. So my process for approaching a scene, how do I pick an aperture value and that whole thing, there's quite a few different, let's just say, questions wrapped up within that. In terms of approaching the scene, typically I'm looking for an anchor or a trigger, something that triggers my attention and something that I can use as an anchor. An anchor can be a color, a subject, a composition, light. It's the thing that catches your eye in the first place. In most cases, the trigger that made you stop and pull your camera out is the anchor of that image as well. I've made videos about it, going into more detail. So that's that. In terms of aperture value, I'm typically at f4, and then after that, I would just adjust as I need to. If I want the most out of focus elements, I'd go for slightly wider, like f2, f1.4. If I want more in focus, I'll go to f8. But what am I on now on this? f5.6 is where I'm sat now, which feels about right for the conditions and kind of where we are. Yeah. Next question is about how I focus on the Sony A7R. There'll be a more detailed video coming out about Sony settings and how I use them, but to put it simply, I have the AF on button set to the tracking, so I can press and hold it and the camera will track whatever the square is on. I then have the C1 button, or the one that's next to the back button focus button, set to AFS, so when I press that, I am in AFS, which means I can focus and recompose. And then the actual shutter button is set to AFC, which is just general continuous autofocus. And then I have the AEL button reprogrammed to subject detection. So between those three buttons, I can basically access every feature of the focus system. And having used that setup for the last year and a half, it's been pretty reliable and I haven't really changed from that. What has been the most difficult place to shoot in terms of country and why? There are two places that come to mind straight away. One is Qatar and UAE. Qatar, I use it as like a little kind of layover. If we go to Asia, it works out a bit cheaper. Same with Dubai to that degree as well. I've spent a bit of time in both, and the reason they're very difficult to shoot in is because of, well, street photography as we know it is illegal pretty much, because you're not allowed to take photos of anyone who might be recognizable in the shot. Now, the actual law itself, correct me if I'm wrong, but from what I've researched, even if you like take a selfie and there's a recognizable face in the back, that can land you in hot water. Obviously, you know, full of tourists, well, maybe not now, but full of tourists, so everyone's taking photos and selfies. I'm not quite sure how that's enforced. However, I'm sure if you're walking around with a proper camera doing, as I've said, street photography as we know it, that would be an issue. And obviously that makes it very difficult, not necessarily because I take photos of people's faces directly, but even if I'm taking a photo of someone walking through, let's say, a patch of light, that can easily be interpreted as me taking the photo of that person, and then that can escalate. And in those countries, they don't fuck around. Even if you are in the right, you can end up in a lot of trouble and with a lot of headaches to deal with should someone say something. So it is quite difficult, but at the same time, it's a nice challenge to shoot something that's a bit different. Like a good example is Preet, who lives in Dubai, and he takes photos of loads of things in Dubai that are not people. So it's definitely possible, but yeah, I'd say those two places. My top 3 Fuji recipes and why. I don't have top 3 Fuji recipes. I don't use them anywhere near enough to have that kind of an opinion. However, what I can say is that by far my favorite Fuji film simulation is Nostalgic Negative. It's like a very desaturated, warm, summery simulation that I use on most of my Fuji photos. And even though I don't use it as an in-camera JPEG recipe, I use it in Lightroom as a profile when I start editing my photos. So yeah, I've kind of answered that question, but I've not answered it, so I'm sorry. I've done my best. Where in the world would I want to photograph if there were no conditions? I guess by that you mean like geopolitical things. I would love to follow the Silk Road, and I would love to just... Do you know what it is? I'm not going to answer that question directly because there's too many places. I just wish that we lived in a world where you can just go anywhere to explore and not have to worry about various geopolitical wars and all that kind of stuff. Maybe one day we will have that kind of a reality. I don't know. Yeah, I know it's a bit of a cop-out answer, but there's too many places to mention that I would like to visit, and I would visit if not for various global wars and tensions and all that kind of stuff that comes with it. So yeah. How do I manage to find my specific style over time? The short answer is I don't really know how to answer that, because style isn't just like how you edit, and style also changes as time goes on. My photography style today is very different to what it was maybe even 2-3 years ago. So style isn't just editing, it's a combination of many things. Where you shoot, what time you shoot, what focal length do you use. 3 years ago maybe you're shooting in the city at 85mm, and today you're shooting in the countryside at 35mm. Even if you edit them the same, which will be quite difficult, they're still fundamentally different styles of photography. So my only suggestion with style is to don't get too bogged down in it and just do what you feel is right. So don't try to engineer a style, but instead just shoot what you want to shoot in the way that you want to shoot it, and your style will just develop naturally over time. Who is your favorite street photographer? Well, my favorite photographers, regardless of genre, will always be my friends. Whilst I can appreciate the work of the masters from 30, 40, 50 years ago and the best photographers out there today, my favorites are always my friends, because they're my friends, innit? So they're always going to be my favorites regardless of who else is out there. What's my favorite street and travel photography focal length? If it's just one focal length, then I would say 40mm, because you can still get quite close to pick out things, but you're not so tight that you lose context of the whole scene. If it's just travel and scenes, then 35, and if it's very specific street photography, then it's 50. So yeah, 40 in the middle. What area do I recommend to shoot in London on an overcast day? So when it's overcast, I'm looking for contrast. And with that in mind, I would head into the city, because you have loads of tall buildings, clean compositions, and a lot of contrast due to those buildings. Look for alleyways, look for walkways, go into museums like the Tate. But in terms of a specific location, I would say the city, Bank, Canary Wharf, and anywhere with tall glass modern buildings. When are the camera guides for the Sony cameras coming out? Again, I'm really sorry. I know I've been promising these for quite a few months now. Life just gets in the way. You know, we've moved into a new apartment, we have to set that up. I've also been quite exhausted from the constant travel. I just wanted time to chill, to read, to rest on the sofa, to do just normal stuff like go see family, friends, that kind of stuff. So all the camera guides unfortunately just got pushed back. In terms of when they'll be coming out, they're definitely coming out. The work has actually started on them, but I reckon in the next couple of 2-3 months. I've got a big trip coming up, so I won't be able to do much on there, but the camera guides are coming, blogs are coming. It's just life gets in the way, doesn't it? Oh, sorry, I forgot to mention, and also it's not something that I want to rush. If I really want to, I can just rush one out in like a few days, but I can't possibly charge someone money for a product that's been rushed. I would much rather take my time, disappoint a few people, lose a few customers who don't want to wait, but at least I deliver the best product that I possibly can to those who are willing to wait. That's just my philosophy with all my digital products. You can't rush these things. So yeah. Next question is, what white balance do I use? I'm always in auto white balance. When I'm filming a video, I will just lock it before I hit record because sometimes it can shift. And for photography, for the most part, white auto is perfectly fine. If you're shooting in RAW, it doesn't really matter too much anyway. The only time I will lock white balance in photography is if I'm shooting like a sunset and it can really jump around a lot and I don't want to waste time in editing matching all the white balances. But other than that, just leave it on auto and that's it. Is it possible to be truly unique as a photographer in this day and age? So I would say yes, as long as you're photographing your life, your reality, and your vision without copying what's popular. Because I would say that most photography, maybe not most, but a large chunk of photography these days, especially in social media, it could be taken by a number of different photographers because everyone is like copying everyone. I've lost count. Actually, we have an internal joke between me and Aaron, Faisal, etc. of how many times we come across a reel that we think is Aaron, or we think is Faisal, or we think is someone else, but it's actually another person. And it's not even just influenced, it's a carbon copy. So that is definitely quite popular to just copy other people. But it's completely and utterly feasible to have your own voice today, as long as you're documenting your reality and you're not trying to be someone else. Actually, let me tell you a very quick story of how I ended up doing street photography in the first place. When I first started to take an interest in photography, I actually wanted to do landscape photography because I was influenced by all the landscape YouTubers like your Thomas Heatons and all that kind of stuff. But then that never materialized because I'm not the type of person who would spend ages going to one spot just to get one photo and planning everything meticulously. Also, I lived nowhere near any landscapes. I lived in London. And the very reason I ended up doing street photography in particular is because it was on my doorstep. And when I was out shooting, I didn't create with any agenda. I was just documenting my own reality, my own life. And that's how everything kind of came to be. Same as just my photography in general. I don't set out to kind of copy someone, to create something that someone else has done, or to showcase a life that isn't real. My photography is a reflection of where I am in life. So in the future, if let's say we move to the countryside because we've started a family, you will see a lot less, if almost no street photography, unless it's like throwbacks or trips. So yeah, I guess to summarize this little speech, I would say document your reality and go with your gut feeling about what looks good. Don't let other people tell you what's good. Go with your gut feeling, and over time, chip away at it, and you will create your own unique voice in this very crowded, but very imitation heavy world. The next question is, how do I always keep pushing to try new things and to push the boundaries. So to try new things is very easy. One day I'll be dead, and when I am dead, well, not when I'm dead, but when I'm dying, I don't want to be thinking of, oh, I wish I'd done this, or I wish I would have done this. So that's a big enough or good enough reason in itself, to be honest. In terms of pushing boundaries, honestly, I am very content with life, with my photography, with YouTube, and with everything that I'm doing. My whole goal isn't to push any new boundaries or become the next celebrated photographer or win awards. I don't care about that. These things are meaningless to me. My only goal is to improve as a photographer, as a video maker, as a person, by a few % each year. And when I look at a 10-year trajectory or cycle, not trajectory, but 10-year period, I am happy with the progress, and I'm happy with me as a person and with my work. All right, the West End got very hectic. The marathon's on, there's so much going on. But I did manage to bump into my good mate, Josh Jack. He gave me a little tip-off about a particular shot that was happening in Soho, so I had to run sweaty to try and get it. There was someone just jet washing the roof and the water was coming down. It looked really cool. I managed to get it though, and have a quick coffee with Josh. On that note, Josh, Jack and Sean Tucker have jointly released a book. Well, they're releasing a book about photography. I've not seen it yet. I'll definitely be getting my copy, but if you want to support two great London photographers and genuinely good people, I've put like a little link to where you can get their book down below. There is no affiliates, there's no commission, I'm not making anything from it. I asked Josh to be on camera to plug his book, but he said he would rather not until the book is finally out. But you know, I want to support my mates, so yeah, link down below. I'm not getting anything out of this. The next question is, how do I frame my shots quickly without interrupting the subject or drawing attention to yourself? So there's different ways to answer this, and again, I'm not trying to get a cop-out answer, but ultimately it's about confidence and experience, because in order for you to get those images quickly, there are a few things you need to be very good at. So for example, camera settings, right? You need to know your camera inside out, so that when you see something, you're not like fucking around with camera settings. You know exactly what you're doing. You can use your camera blindfolded, and you can just kind of, you know, whip the camera out, take the shot. You're not thinking too much about what focus mode you should be in, what exposure you're in. You know, it's all kind of like second nature. So that's kind of the first aspect of it. The second one is you need to, obviously you'll have a trigger, you'll have something that catches your eye about that moment, and you need to commit to it. You know, you don't want to be like raising your camera and then kind of hesitating halfway and then stopping and pausing and kind of jerking around, because all of those behaviors will definitely attract attention. You see something, and in one move you confidently take the photo, and whether you get it, you get it. You know, if you get it, you get it. If you don't, you don't. So that will probably be the two bits of advice, and that's learn your camera inside out, and when you see something, go with your gut feeling and commit to it. Don't start over analyzing halfway through taking the photo. Just take it and learn from it afterwards. If you're stuck in a creative rut, what is it that kickstarts everything again? There's a few things. For me, a creative rut usually means early signs of burnout, so having some well-earned rest is important. By rest, I don't mean sitting around watching TV feeling sorry for yourself, but I mean go out and do exercise, go and play tennis, ride a bike, do something that is not going to challenge you creatively, but just maybe physically or something else, right? That's the first thing. The second thing is to change things up. You know, London's a great place to shoot, but even after a while you can get very bored if you don't mix it up. So one of the best things you can do is see if you can change the scenery. Maybe get like a cheap flight somewhere in Europe, jump on a train, find a way to mix things up. That always helps, at least for me. If you can't mix it up with your locations, try to mix it up with gear. So if you're always shooting on wide lenses, try shooting on a telephoto lens. That might work. So yeah, rest and change are the two kind of main things that would help. Yeah. What's my favorite photo and why? The favorite image is from New York from 7 years ago, and it's of a girl in the subway kind of looking over her shoulder as the train is pulling away. Now, that isn't just any girl, that's my girlfriend. And that trip, well, at the time she lived in New York, and I went to see her shortly after we met. We've only kind of known each other for like a month or so. And I just got that picture, so we were going, I think, to a museum. And not only is it like a good picture objectively, but also it has a significant kind of personal memory attached to it, and it's a very sentimental picture. And for that reason, it's my favorite picture that I've taken. Yeah. The next question is about how to respond if someone stops you in the street and asks if you've taken their photo. Well, I would say by far the most important thing you can do is don't pretend that you didn't do anything. If you took someone's photo and they saw you trying to kind of hide it, trying to be sneaky, you're only going to aggravate the situation. See their body language. If they're curious, smile and say, oh, you know, I loved your hat, I loved da-da-da-da. If you could see they're a bit agitated, again, always start with a smile, start in the same manner, but just be extra kind of, take more time to explain who you are, what you're doing, etc. I think in most cases, if there is a legitimate reason for you taking a photo that does not include making someone look bad or putting them in an embarrassing position, people would love a copy of their photo. I always, you know, if someone says to me anything, I'll say, oh, do you want a copy of the photo? I would say by far the most important thing is to just own it. Say, yeah, I took your photo because of da-da-da-da-da, do you want to see it? And don't try to be sneaky or hide or pretend you didn't do anything, because that is going to really aggravate the situation. Do I find photos from my home country to be more boring than from other places? Yes and no. I mean, in London you can get so many amazing photos. What I would say though is just, it's hard to say that, because obviously when you're at home you don't have the novelty factor, whereas when you're traveling everything is new and you feel more inspired. So in short, no, I don't find photos from here to be more boring. I just find that it's hard, there's more work to get those photos here compared to when you're traveling. You inspire us, what inspires you? Well, first, thank you. What inspires me? Honestly, again, it's gonna sound so cheesy and so bad, but it's just life, just day-to-day things. I don't need anything particularly crazy to inspire me. You know, just waking up, taking my time, making a good coffee, going out to shoot, just exploring, traveling. Yeah, I guess exploring and traveling, going to new places, watching the world go by. Yeah. I've got a couple of gear questions. First one is, what do I think of the Sony RX1, and would I get one over a Leica Q3? It's a cool camera. I don't really have anything to think about it. I have a Sony A7CR, which is basically the same thing but with more features in a slightly bigger package. It's not something that I would personally get because I just don't need it, but it seems cool if you're in the market for a compact full frame thing. It's definitely smaller than the Leica, but then it's not weather sealed, so there is that. But yeah, and the other gear question was, what do I think about Canon? And if I've ever used one, I think I had like a Canon M50 when I first started out like 9 years ago. Apart from that, there's nothing else I can say. I think with camera gear in general, right, I have a really good system now where I've got my Sonys as my main workhorse cameras, and that's what I do 95% of my photography on. And then I've still got like the Hasselblad because there's a new project. I've got the Q3, and the Fuji X100 and the little Ricoh as well, which I use for the remainder few percent of the time. And this actually brings me on to another question where someone said, oh, I thought you sold all your other cameras. I did, but then that came around and bit me in the arse. As you know, I sell camera guides. So Leica came out with a huge update not long after I sold the camera. And the update was so big that I had to decide, do I buy another Q3 and update the guide, or do I stop selling it? Because, I mean, let's be honest, it's not very fair to sell a camera guide that isn't fit for purpose anymore. And also, it's deeply unfair for the people who bought the guide, who now have something they've paid for which no longer is correct for the camera they have. So I made the decision to buy another Q3 and update the guide, and then at the same time I picked up an X100 and a Ricoh, just so that if Fuji update their camera or Ricoh update their camera, I am not faced with the same situation. I barely use them, they sit on the shelf, and the Ricoh's a GR4, but I'll talk more about that in a bit. And as for the Hasselblad, they reached out to me, they wanted to work on the X2D2. There'll be a whole separate video about that, and of course, you know, I couldn't say no. It's a great camera. Oh wow, that's a really cool car. If you're into your cars, it's a 918 is just driving past right there. Don't see many of those about. But anyway, I hope that answers those questions. Will you be doing any workshops in New York? The short answer is no. And that is because I need to get specific visa rules in order to host workshops in New York. And to get those visas, it's a complete pain in the ass. Plus there's insurances, there's all that kind of stuff involved, which honestly I don't want to get involved with. Many photographers will go abroad and do workshops, especially in America, and they just go on tourist visas, run these big workshops, etc., etc. And in 99.9% of the cases, that's fine. However, especially with the US, it's one of these places where I think you can end up in a lot of trouble if you start running a workshop which is a business while on the soil of that country. And that brings me onto a whole topic of like people who do what I do. Is it tourist visas, business visas, etc.? And from the research that I've done, basically if you're making money directly from the people on the ground of that country, in other words running a workshop, then you need a specific visa to do that. Whereas if you make money online, then it doesn't come from that country, it can come from anywhere. So it's a bit of a grey area. I think in the future there will be a lot of new laws around people who make their money online, because obviously this is still fairly new. It's only, you know, maybe the last 10-15 years, but I would imagine in the next 20-30 years when more and more people make money online, I don't know. But anyway, so short answer is no. How do I get the harsh highlight and shadow look? There's one right there, and it's not a good photo, but generally speaking I just underexpose, expose for the highlights, find very clean lines, and make sure there is actual legit highlights and shadows. I'm doing it on a day like this, so it's now 2 p.m, it's sunny, the light's harsh, does help. So yeah, just look for pockets of light and then start working around them. A lot of it will also come from editing, where you will have to exaggerate the shadows and the highlights as well. How's your health? Well, thank you very much for asking. Overall it's good. I've definitely put some weight on, mostly because when you're traveling a lot, you eat a lot of junk food, you eat out a lot, and even if it's like a clean food, it's never really clean when you eat out, it's only clean when you cook at home. And also lack of gym and exercise, because while walking is good exercise, it doesn't of course replace strength training and that kind of stuff. So overall it's good. There's definitely a huge room for improvement, but this is something that I think is a very long-term play. I don't particularly care about, I need to get six-pack for this summer, because that's not going to achieve anything, but it's more just like little tiny habits. But overall it's getting better. Thank you. Now this could be the most interesting question that I've got in this Q&A, and that was, if I was in the army, what camera would I use and why? So initially I was thinking, okay, it has to be a Sony A1 because it can do everything, it's, you know, the best AF, the best da-da-da-da. But then I was also thinking maybe it is the best technically, but is it going to be very robust in that sense? So now I thought the SL3, because at least with Leica, you know, they're really robust. But then, you know, you still have like a lens and it's quite a big system, and obviously you don't want a system that's too big. And this is a bit of a cop-out answer, but after quite a fair bit of thinking, if I had to bring a camera into that environment, it'll be two cameras, and there'll be a Leica Q3 and a Leica Q343. Why? Well, because they're both built like tanks, they're weather sealed, you know, it's a fixed lens, so you don't have to worry about that. They're not too big, great image quality, great lenses. Okay, the AF is definitely not the best, but it's certainly good enough for those applications. So, oh yeah, and obviously if one of them goes down, you still have another camera. So yeah, Q3 and Q343 would be my choice. What is the most unintuitive fact about photography that has kept you going? And that is that this is a very long-term thing and it never ends. There is no date where you complete photography, there's no point where you've done it, and it's kind of something that runs in the background. So it's almost like, you know, you brush your teeth every day so that when you're like, I don't know, fucking 60, your teeth don't fall out. But it's something that you do every day without really thinking about it. And photography is kind of the same way. It's something that you just work on every single day in the background. Some days you have good days, some days you have bad days. And it's just, you have to kind of look at it as a marathon and not a sprint. So rather than thinking, oh, I need to get this amazing shot today, instead just think, I'm gonna go out with a camera, it's a nice day. If I get something, I get something. If not, then not. So yeah, I would say that is treating photography like a lifelong, long-term project, like, I don't know, an entry in a journal, for example. And I think that will create a very healthy relationship with photography and with the images that you get, because you might not get any good images today or tomorrow or the day after, but you put the effort in, put the reps in, keep going out, and sooner or later things start to click in place. Yeah. Any advice for someone who wants to get their photos out there but detests Instagram? You're not the only one there. I would happily not use Instagram if it wasn't so crucial to what I do for a living on social media. Well, there are two avenues I would go down. The first one is to start your own blog, start your own website. That's probably, you know, you're always going to be in control of that. So no matter what algorithm changes, at the end of the day, your website's your website. If you add like a blog aspect to it, it gives your photography a bit more depth and helps with search engines as well. So that's always good. So that would be the first thing. And the second thing is look at other platforms, like for example, Substack. A lot of photographers are moving onto Substack. They're writing about their photography. They're even just posting photos on there, and they're growing quite well. I don't use it as much as I should. I post on it now and again, but that's a platform. I'm not saying it's the platform that you should use. Some people like it, some people don't, but it's just an option. There are definitely many other options out there. There's all of these photo-centric apps, like Photo, I think it's called Photo, I can't remember. They're available as well. But still, generally speaking, nothing beats your own website and your own kind of corner of the internet as a place to share your work. And then if you do use social media or other apps, you can always kind of just funnel everything back in. And last but not least, again, YouTube, you know, you've probably discovered me here on YouTube as well. YouTube, in my opinion, is not social media. And not everyone needs to walk around with a camera pointing at their face. It's definitely not everyone's cup of tea. But you could maybe do something on there. You don't have to sit there and talk about top 10 tips or camera settings. You can just document your photography. Maybe you just share your work in any particular way. I don't know. Yeah, there's definitely ways of doing it without relying on Instagram. Oh, it's worth saying that I've only talked about online things. There are things you can do in person to get your work out there. For example, you can go to various coffee shops or restaurants and say, you know, I can give you my photography to put on the wall for free in exchange for you to, you know, put in my little name or whatever website at the bottom of the image. How effective that is these days, I don't know. I've personally not done it yet. That might be happening soon, but that's a separate topic. So it might be an avenue. Maybe there are art fairs, maybe there are camera clubs, or there's definitely things you can do in real life to get your work out there. Yeah. How do you deal with high ISO noise? I don't. I shoot at whatever ISO is required, and then if I need to clean it up, Lightroom's denoise function is so good that you can shoot at whatever ISO you want and get it cleaned up. ISO isn't something that I've been particularly worried about for a good few years now. On your Sony, what are the dials controlling? So the 1, 2, 3 custom dials, I've got them set up for different shooting scenarios. So one is aperture priority that we'll use on a day like this. The other one is a shutter priority with a higher shutter speed for when I need to freeze motion. And the other one is a shutter priority but with a lower shutter speed of maybe around 1/125, and that's for shooting in low light conditions. Any tips on taking your camera on a multi-day hike and not hating it? Yes, either pack very, very light or take one zoom and that's it. Basically you want to have 1 max 2 lenses, but even then keep it light. So if that was me going on a multi-day hike, the camera that I would take with me would most likely... The next question is, how do you take a camera on a multi-day hiking trip without hating it? So there are kind of 2 approaches to this. The first approach is just go as small and as light as possible, ideally a fixed focal length, or the other one is to take 1 zoom lens. Now, if it's a very kind of grueling hike, I would go with a small body and maximum 2 primes, a wide one and a tight one. If even that is too much and I don't want to mess around with lenses, then I would just go with 1 prime, and if I had to go 1 prime, it would be around a 35 to 40mm focal length. So Fuji X100, Leica Q343, or in my case, for example, let's say I could use a Sony A7CR and have the 40mm pancake as well as the 24mm pancake, only because they weigh nothing. Also, when you're going on a hike, chances are you're not going to be filming in low light conditions. Therefore, you can take slightly slower lenses like f2.8s or f4s instead of opting for f1.8s, f2s, etc. So to summarize, I would say if you want to cover a range of things, take a zoom like a 24 to 70, 24 to 50, 28 to 70. But if you just want to document the experience overall, then a compact system with maybe a 35mm, 40mm, 28mm, that kind of a focal range would be great. Whatever you do, keep it as light as possible and make sure your camera is always out. There's no point having a camera if it's going to be in your backpack and then you have to stop, take it out, fuck around with lenses, turn it on. It's just like you don't want to be doing that. So hopefully that helps. Is photography profitable for me in 2026, or is all my income coming from social media? I mean, in terms of money from the act of photography, by that I mean there is no social media aspect to it. I'm paid strictly for the images I produce on a freelance basis, where ultimately I'm selling my time shooting. I've stopped doing that. I can't remember last time I did that, and that's a personal choice because I don't want to sell my time on a freelance basis. In terms of making money from my actual photos, it's not a huge amount. There's some licensing involved. Now and again I've shot like around the city for some company that wanted those images. It's definitely not enough to sustain myself. The vast majority of my income comes from my blog and from my digital products, as well as YouTube deals, etc. But that is a conscious choice that I am making to earn my living that way. And I'm not doing social media because I was forced to do it because there's no work in photography. I know plenty of freelance photographers who are probably making more than I do. It's just something I've done on purpose. So yes, there is money in photography. Is it as much as it was maybe 10 years ago? Probably not. But I guess if you can find a niche or a unique angle that you bring to the table, I still think it's possible, but I'm also not an authoritative voice on this topic. How has your switch to Sony been going? It's been a while now, so what's an update? Is there an update? So for those of you who are new to the channel, for the first 5-6 years of my photography, I was exclusively shooting with Fuji. Then I worked with Hasselblad, so I figured, let me try other brands. I tried Sony, and I just immediately preferred the Sony, which is why I switched the whole system over, at least my primary system. In terms of how it's going so far, again, I'm sorry for the Fuji enthusiasts. I wish I'd done it sooner. In every possible way, the Sony is a better camera. Yes, it's definitely more expensive. Yes, it's definitely bigger, but it's also a lot more capable. So the colors, you can get the colors to where you want them if you edit enough. Obviously, if you don't like editing, the Fuji is still a better option. This is not to say Fuji is a bad camera. Fujifilms are decent cameras, but as a tool, the Sony is just so much further ahead. The Fuji is an amazing camera, like as a hobby camera, but yeah, I just kind of hit the wall with my Fuji systems, and with the Sonys, it's allowed me to shoot in a way that I physically couldn't shoot before, which is quite freeing. But overall, yeah, it's fine. I mean, again, this is gonna probably annoy brand enthusiasts, but like, they're all just cameras, innit? They all do the same thing. I don't get the whole brand loyalty or enthusiasm for brands. It's just all the same crap. Like, some working in one way, others working a slightly different way, but ultimately, you can get good shots with a Fuji X-E3. You can get good shots with a Sony A1 II or with a Hasselblad. Most of the image will come from your head, not from the camera. Obviously, some are better than others at certain things, but like, I don't know. To this day, I personally don't understand the whole issue where people get really hung up over brands. That's a whole separate topic. I don't want to go on a tangent here, but that's also why so many YouTubers keep pumping out videos about X100s and Leicas, because people keep watching them. You make a video about the process of photography, you'll get 20% as many views as you would making the video about your favorite X100 lens hood. So yeah, anyway, I've really gone off on a tangent there, but yeah. Do you ever use flash for your photography? No, it's not something I use. I might use it for like friends, things, bits and bobs, but it's not my cup of tea. Another question is, what's my favorite beer from every country that I visit? Again, I can't answer that because I don't really drink that much. I'm not a drinker. If I have one beer a month, it's definitely a boozy month for me. So I'll just get whatever the local one is. I couldn't tell you a difference. I like an IPA. I also like a nice cold lager on a hot day. So I don't know. They're all good. As a micro Fuji content creator, how do I evolve my personal brand? I don't want to break your heart here, but you need to detach yourself from the Fuji label, because if you don't, then you will forever be a Fuji content creator. Now, if that's a title or if that's something that you want, great, more power to you. But when you're starting out, you have quite a lot of kind of power in your hands, because you really can direct this ship in any way you want it to go. But once you've started going, it can be very hard to change course. So if you've established an online presence as a Fujifilm content creator, and let's just say all of a sudden, like I did, you switch to Sony or another brand, you will take a huge hit with your viewership. And I have. There are people who've legitimately messaged me and said they no longer wish to support or follow me because I don't shoot with the same camera that they do. And there are people who say that now they think they can't look at my work in the same way because I don't use the same camera that they do. And if I were to start all over again, I wouldn't attach myself to a brand, especially a very popular one. Now, it's going to make it much harder to grow, and you would actually need to be skillful in another area to stand out if you can't talk about a specific camera or brand. But yeah, my biggest piece of advice would be very mindful of what you want to be known for and the direction you want to go in. If you love Fujifilm and you just want to make Fuji content, then lean into that as much as you can. But don't do it just because it gets you quick and cheap views, because you will regret that later if that's not something that you're really passionate about. Is travel the best way to spend money on photography? Not just that, I think travel is the best way to spend money, period. Travel will, like, again, it depends on your attitude. Obviously, if you're just going to Ibiza to get smashed every weekend, I wouldn't say that would necessarily be beneficial. But if you're traveling with an open mind to explore new places, it's just the best thing in the world, because it will change your perspective on so many things. And in terms of photography, it will open you up to whole new color palettes, whole new environments. And when I look at myself, the biggest growth, both photographically and personally, has come from travel. The person I am today, after the last 5 years of extensive travel, is very, very different to the person before that. So, in my opinion, travel is the number one thing to spend your money on when it comes to photography and life. Okay, it's getting way too busy and way too noisy now, so I'm gonna put this camera away, do some photography, and we'll carry on the Q&A session when I get back home. What a day though, isn't it? Okay, just got back, so let me finish the questions now. So, the next one, what cities did you find unexpectedly amazing for street photography? Not London, New York, etc. So something which is a bit more unique. Well, that's a good question. I'll go with Palermo, because the other places I'm thinking about, they're more, I would say, travel photography. So like, for example, parts of Okinawa, like on the islands, they were amazing, but I wouldn't necessarily say they're street photography. Even though technically you could do street photography anywhere. But I would say Palermo in Sicily was a cool place. Actually, I will add Malta. So Valletta and Malta was really cool. So I would say, yeah, Valletta and Sicily. And they're actually quite similar in terms of the aesthetic, but they're also kind of pretty much next to each other. So that explains that. What's the best all-around pancake lens for Sony? So for me, is it here somewhere? Oh, it's over there, I can't reach it. But it's the 40mm f2.5 and the 24 f2.8. They're tiny little things like that. They weigh nothing, and they are incredible. I use them loads. They're probably my most used lenses. You know, on the shelf over there, I've got a bunch of, you know, GM lenses, which cost me an arm and a leg, but I just default to the little pancakes. They're great. Do you ever come home with no photos because even nice scenes are not worth capturing? Quite often, yes. I would say that 1 in every 2 or 3 outings results in not a single image that I am happy with. Obviously, I come back with photos, but nothing that I would be happy to share publicly with my name on it. Sometimes, I mean, this doesn't happen as often now, but there are times when I would go out and I just don't want to take any photos. I could be somewhere really nice. Actually, no, that happened very recently, sorry. in Antarctica, there was one day where we took the Zodiacs, the little boats, to what they call like an iceberg graveyard, which is where the current pushes all the icebergs kind of into one little group, and you can just meander around them in a little boat if you have one. And it was an incredibly still day. The water was like glass. It was quite warm actually, because it was a completely clear sky with the sun out. And I had my camera on me, and that was the only time when I just didn't want to take a single shot. I just wanted to sit there and observe and just take it all in. It doesn't happen very often, but that was one of the very few times where I came back from that particular outing that morning. I think maybe one photo, and not one keeper, I mean one photo physically taken. Have you ever been mugged? Thankfully, touch wood, where's wood? There's wood over there as well. I haven't. I've been close a few times. However, luckily, because I grew up in a rough-ish part of London, in a council estate, and I spent most of my youths just not in the streets, but like, you know, I would go out, we'd go into Central, we'd go into, you know, me and my mates would be out and about all the time. You kind of develop a street sense type of skill. And also with street photography, I've noticed that skill has improved considerably, because you're always looking, you're always paying attention, and you're always looking for certain things which stick out of the ordinary. So there's been quite a few cases where I avoided a mugging or avoided theft because I've spotted something. So two examples. One was in Valencia actually the other day when I was doing the phone only challenge. I was walking down the main street. I turned off into one of the side streets because the light was good. And as I turned down the side street, there was a bit like a crossing with two small side streets. And one guy, dodgy looking dude, right, came on a bicycle and staring at me and staring at my phone. He then kind of turned around and he either whistled or he did something, because once he did that, another guy came out on a bicycle looking equally as dodgy, and straight away I was like, yeah, I'm out. I typically, you know, if something's out of the ordinary, it piques my interest, but then there are certain clues like that which you pick up on, and again, maybe I'm overthinking it. Maybe that he was just saying to his mate, I don't know, there's a nice light here, come and take a picture, I don't know, but I think the likelihood of that is pretty low. Another example was, it's literally today, I was in London with Hasselblad, and I was walking around Mayfair, and there was a guy walking in front of me, and he was walking quite quickly, but then he kind of turned around, saw me, and then he really slowed down, and that's kind of the first alarm bell, so to speak. He then stopped to one side. He stood in the corner. There was like a little church. So he stood in the corner, and as he stood in the corner, he put a belly on and then put his hood up. And then at the moment I walked past him, he quickly started to walk behind me. And for me, those were three things which on their own, you might not think anything too much of them. Well, maybe the belly, it's a bit weird covering your face in public, but like all three together, you're kind of thinking what's going on here. So I just went straight into Regent Street, out of the quiet street, and he obviously didn't follow me because, you know, he wouldn't risk getting into trouble for a camera. There was another example I can give you. Yes, in Casablanca, in Morocco, I was with my mum, and we again went down one of the side streets. It was really nice, go to explore just away from the main tourist area. So we're walking down, and there's two guys, right? So one guy's sitting down, one guy's standing up. The guy that's standing up, again, both looking pretty dodgy. When I say pretty dodgy, I don't know what it is, right? But like, you start to learn that it's a combination of how people are dressed, the state of their clothes, their body language, and kind of their facial expressions. It's very hard for me to give you a definitive objective list of what makes me think, okay, that person might be a bit dodgy, but you kind of learn to figure it out, and it has nothing to do with race or ethnicity or anything like that, because it happens in every single race, ethnicity, etc. But I guess, again, like being growing up in London, you kind of spot these people much easier. I don't know. Anyway, so he's looking at me, then he crosses the road. As he crosses the road in front of us, he then stands opposite the dude that's sitting down, and then he winks at him, and then he looks at us and starts smiling and staring at us. Now, that could have been completely innocent. Maybe he was saying to his mate, oh mate, offer him a coffee or a tea or something, I don't know. But just a combination of these things, and my gut feeling was just like, right, let's turn around and get out of here, because something just feels off. This is a very long answer, isn't it? So I guess a short answer to your question, no, I've not been mugged, thankfully. Where's the wood? Touch the bed. But I've come close, and luckily, you know, my street sense, I guess, has saved me. It might happen in the future. It's a matter of time. I don't know. But yeah. Do you think style or visibility matters more early on? It depends what matters. When you say matters, what is it that's mattering? If you want to appeal to brands and to do freelance photography and to get hired for your photography, then I do think having a style is important, because then a brand would know exactly what they're buying. You know, if I am looking for a photographer for a particular thing and I go on your profile and you see like black and white slow motion, you see filmic, you see teal and orange, you see people, cars, products, like it's a mash of everything, then I don't know what I'm going to get from you. So I would most likely pass and move on to someone else. Whereas if there is a cohesive and clear theme to your work, then it makes my job easier to decide if you're suitable for this project or not. So if you want to work with brands and freelance and all that kind of stuff, then I would say style is very important. In terms of just general maybe social media, if you want to go down that route, then I would say visibility is actually really important, because I don't think, obviously that's a whole separate topic, but we don't have social media. We have attention media where you can have a lot of followers or no followers and still reach many, many people. So I think in that case, visibility is better. Yeah. As always, I get a bunch of questions. When are you coming to, for example, listen to Brazil? When you're coming here, there, everywhere? Listen, I would love to visit everywhere. Hopefully I can one day and make my way around all of these places. It's just life goes by so quickly, and I wish I could slow down time or pack more hours into the day and do more. I can't, but yeah, one day I'll get around to it. What do you think beginners should focus on, style or consistency? Consistency, without a doubt. Your style, as maybe I've mentioned in one of the earlier questions, will just come naturally, but consistency is everything. There are some very talented photographers that you would know the names of who have, I don't want to say fallen off, because they haven't fallen off, but who have just disappeared because they're not consistent. So my advice is consistency is everything, and make photography part of your routine, weekly routine, daily routine, monthly routine, whatever it might be. Consistency is everything. So the question is, how do you color grade F-log2? However, this can then be expanded to how do I color grade videos. Now, obviously, I don't color grade F-log2 because I don't shoot on Fujifilm. So now it's S-log3 and this, which is the DJI D-log. The short answer is I don't really color grade. I've purchased a bunch of not presets, what do you call them, LUTs. I've tried color grading, and what I've learned is that it's just not my thing. Some people like Faisal, Aaron, Mike, Ill Concept, they are absolutely incredibly talented at that, but it's just, I've tried and it's not my thing. So I have purchased, they're called Phantom LUTs. and they basically, I think it's by a colorist, a Hollywood colorist who made them. But anyway, they kind of get all your footage to the same level. So the DJI should match the Sony, should match the iPhone, etc. And then after that, I'll just buy random LUTs from other creators who do video and who are good at it. I've used Faisal's LUT for a while. I am using now a LUT by I don't know, Cineprint, I think they're called. So I would apply that on top of the correction LUT, but I would reduce the opacity just to give a hint of a look and not a completely strong look. And then I would just mess around with the exposures and the white balances to get it looking how I want. And it's all done in DaVinci. So yeah. How do you decide whether to bring a telephoto lens on a trip or not? Well, so for me, my kind of primary telephoto lens is the Sigma 90mm. And when I use it on a high resolution camera like the A7R, I can crop to APS-C mode and get 135mm. For me, that focal length is enough in most city environments. And that will usually come with me on pretty much every single trip. In terms of the big telephoto, the 70-200, I've got one. I've not really used it, to be honest. I actually bought it for the Antarctica trip and I left it at home because I didn't have any space for it. Because I was doing backpack only. I would bring it on trips where backpacking and travel is not going to be happening. So, for example, if we go to Iceland and then we're going to just hire a car, I'd bring the 70-200 because in those locations it would be very useful. Plus, because we're not going to be backpacking and jumping between buses with backpacks, it'll go from the airplane into a car and that's it. I'm okay with bringing that. But generally speaking, outside of the logistics, because for some people it's not an issue, I would say anywhere where I would struggle to get closer to the subject is where I would bring that. It would be as simple as that. And also kind of if there's potential for like long distance abstract photos. So as I've said, a good example is Iceland. I've never been, but if I were to go, that's the lens I would pack. If I were to go to Antarctica again, this time I would bring the 70-200 because there were shots that I've missed that I wouldn't have done if I had it. Do you keep all the raw files from a trip or do you only select a few? So regardless of what I'm doing, I only keep the raw files of images which are okay, images which I will keep. I know some photographers keep every single raw file they take. I personally don't do that because I know very clearly what I like and what I don't like. If a photo is a maybe, it might be good, I'll keep it. But anything that I think, yeah, I'm never going to use that, I'll delete. Has it ever bitten me in the ass? No, because I've never gone back to look through my old work. I know many people say to me, oh, but if you delete all the raw files, what happens if you need this photo from that day? Like, I don't remember the photos I took yesterday, let alone 3-4 years ago, and go through a folder of like thousands of images to try and find a version of a shot. That has never happened to me. So for that reason, I'll only keep the images that I like. And we're on to the last question, which is, do I have any hobbies outside of photography and do I photograph them? So, I mean, for me, travel and photography are my two biggest hobbies. And to be fair, they take up most of my hobby time. But outside of that, I love hiking. I don't do it as much as I want to do it. I wish I could do it more. But hiking is huge. I love racket sports. Just, again, I wish I had more time to play tennis, to play badminton. That's always fun. Swimming. Anything active I tend to enjoy, or anything that you can do either on your own or with just maybe one other person. I don't really photograph them. Now, obviously, if I'm going on a hike, I will always have my camera on me, but I wouldn't really make YouTube videos about it, and I wouldn't, create blogs about my favorite hikes and stuff. Never say never, because blogs are very easy to do retrospectively. But for me, these things, especially hiking, I just want to keep for me. So when I do take photos, they're more for my own memories rather than okay, I need to be at this hiking spot at 6 a.m. to get the sunrise shot. I would never do that because to me that's my idea of hell. Instead, it would be just documenting the day out. Yeah, I used to be, when I was younger, I used to be a lot into cars and into mountain biking. I stopped mountain biking because, well, I'm much older now, so when you crash, it hurts a lot more, you can break things, and to be honest, I'm at a stage of life where I don't need to get adrenaline launching myself off a jump on a bike in order to feel alive. With regards to cars, again, I used to be really into cars. I just grew, I don't want to say I grew out of it, but I've kind of been there, I've done it, I've had nice cars, I've driven nice cars, I've driven on racetracks, I've driven on ice, I've done a bunch of stuff in cars in my 20s, and I kind of got it out of my system, and I'm just not that bothered about them anymore. So, yeah. Okay, I think this is everything. I hope I've answered all your questions. I don't think I've missed anything. I'm just quickly going through. Yeah, I hope I didn't miss anything. If I have, I'm so sorry. But I think this looks... oh no, wait, I did miss one. Did I answer this? I'm not sure. Favorite street and... No, I did answer this one. I did answer this one. Yeah, they're all covered. So thank you ever so much for watching. This whole video was meant to feel as amateur, as raw, as unprofessional as possible, because, well, it's time for the channel update, isn't it? So I have been experimenting over the last few years with different ways of making videos, with different approaches to photography, and generally just trying to prioritize in my head what it is I want to focus on. And what I've come to learn about me is that I am not very good at being good at many different things. So anytime I try to shift focus towards, let's say, making high quality YouTube videos, I find that my photography suffers. Anytime I shift focus towards like learning how to color grade better, I find that my own photo editing suffers. And while I've been experimenting with, walking around with this little DJI camera, I've been experimenting doing talking heads at home, doing cinematic videos, and trying to see what I ultimately enjoy making. And what I've come to learn is that I am not a filmmaker. I do not see the world as a filmmaker. I can't, how can I put it? Like, people can easily create a video in their head and then go about filming and editing it. I can't do that. My brain just doesn't function like that. I would much rather just stick a camera on, sit here and just have a chat with you, and just let it ramble, let it run and whatever. So with my channel going forwards, there would be a much lower focus or no focus on the cinematic side of stuff. I've tried it. I don't know, I just can't get into it. Some people are amazing at it, but it's not me. But there'll be more videos which are very kind of informal, hopefully taking you more behind the scenes. And basically, my primary focus will shift back to photography, because I would rather just be very good at photography and keep improving as a photographer, rather than being an okay filmmaker or video maker and an okay photographer. And I feel that in the last year, the quality of my photography has decreased. Now, I made a video about it a while ago. We all go through cycles. You have cycles where you're creating, you have cycles where you're inspired, cycles when, you're making the best work. But then you have cycles when you're not really making anything worthwhile, when you don't like your work, when the quality of your work is not as good as it used to be. And then you do some deep diving, you figure out, you experiment, and then you do another cycle where you pick up your mojo again and you carry on. So I'm kind of on the lower end of that cycle at the moment. So with regards to the videos on the channel, I am taking the route of No cinematic stuff, a lot of talking heads, but also just a lot of action camera outside type of stuff. It's not going to be polished. It's not going to be as nice as many of the other YouTubers. But ultimately, I would rather put more of my eggs in the photography basket than in the YouTube basket, because, yeah, you know, like photography for me is always going to be number one. So that's kind of where we are with the YouTube side of stuff, but everything carries on. The blog, same again. There'll be more effort going into the blog going forward. So I'll be doing a lot more writing about trips, about photography, about all that kind of stuff. So expect more there. In terms of sponsorships, bits and bobs, so I am still very open to taking on sponsors. I did, the Leica stuff recently. I've got Hasselblad coming up. I've got Insta360 coming up. And my approach to these videos now is they're not going to be reviews, but they're just going to be showcases. And I am very clear with all of these brands about it. So with Insta360, I was saying, I will show what your camera can do. I will tell people how to use it. But don't expect me, I'm not going to sit here and say, you have to buy it, da da da. Obviously, there'll have to be like a link and stuff in the bottom for people to click. That's part of the deal. Everyone does it, but it's not going to be like, you have to go and buy this. I would love to be in a position where I make maybe 1 or 2 YouTube videos a month, and the rest of the time I'm focusing on the photography, but that's just not feasible at the moment. So don't expect any kind of video schedules. I will just make them as and when, but I'm still hoping for at least 3 a month. What else I can tell you about YouTube and photography? Well, about YouTube, that's basically about it. In terms of photography, my goal is I feel like I'm in the rut, and my goal is to, over time, get out of that rut just through basic repetition, to always be shooting, to put a bigger emphasis on photography, and also to try and regain the direction that I feel like I've lost with my photography. So about a year ago, my direction was very much, nice scenes. That is still the direction, but looking at my recent work, sometimes I'm not quite sure. So I'm still kind of navigating that. Perhaps I'm overthinking, most likely. Perhaps I'm stuck in my own head, but that's just part of the process. So that's that. Business. So as I've said, all the camera guides are going to be updated. There'll be new camera guides coming. All the other digital products will be updated as time goes on. So that's that. In terms of personal life, so if you've joined this channel in the last 2 years, I was traveling extensively, or full time actually, traveling with my girlfriend around the world. Now we have a flat. We have this place in South London. This is a temporary flat. It's not going to be our permanent home, but it will be home for the next few years while we figure out the next chapter of life, where we want to be, where we want to set our roots. The problem with travel, and the biggest downsides of travel, is that you start to see your own home through a different lens, pun kind of intended, and you, once you've seen how other parts of the world operate, you come back to your home and you don't criticize, because every place is different. There's no good place, there's no bad place. Every country, city has its ups and downs, but you just start to question things. So now that we're back in London, we're still trying to understand if this will be home for us, our future families, etc. So that's going to be us, our job for the next few years, to see if we're going to stay here or not. In terms of travel, obviously it's going to slow down, because I want to just slow down in general. I could keep pumping out content and making more products and going crazy, but I'm at a stage in life where I make enough money to be comfortable. I'm not rich, but I'm comfortable. And, once all your basic needs are met, anything above that is just, you're sacrificing your time to, I don't know, have a car with an extra exhaust in it. It's not really something that's important to me, but I'm really waffling now. So yeah, so we're here in London for the next few years. We'll still be traveling a lot, but obviously it's going to be heavily reduced because you don't want to pay for a flat that you're not going to be in, and also want to focus on London a little bit more. And that's it, really. That's kind of the general life update. So everything carries on, but there's going to be a lot of optimization, and cleaning up, and just improving in every aspect. That's the goal. So yeah. All right. So this is now on 35 minutes, this chatting at home bit, and when I was outside, it was even longer. Let me know what you think of the footage on this camera. This is the DJI Pocket 4. I picked it up the other day. I used to have the Pocket 3. It used to drive me up the wall because the gimbal would just have a mind of its own. This one seems to be a bit better, but you be the judge of that. The image itself I think is quite nice, but I find it to be a bit jittery. So please let me know if it's a bit jittery. Hopefully it's not. The audio should be good because it's the DJI mics and they're usually quite good. So yeah. All right, I'm done. Hopefully there is a bit of energy that has come across the screen because I am a little bit tired. Maybe that also comes across in the screen, but yeah. Thank you ever so much for watching this video. If you've made it this far, then I get a huge thank you. I've barely made it this far and I'm making it. So yeah, thank you very much. And I haven't got anything to say. We've got 2 days left. I need to sort my life out and we're going on a big trip until the summer. But more on that later. All right. Bye-bye.